People talk about the fact that black people score 15 points less than white people. What do you think of this kind of numbering?
It's a fact whose meaning is totally unclear and whose existence doesn't in any sense specify the cause. Take the black-white difference in America, which is an average of 15 points, which is one standard deviation. By definition, the test is standardized so that 15 points will be a standard deviation. That's true. I mean, nobody denies that. The issue has never been that. The issue has been why. And the existence just doesn't tell you anything about why. The existence of the 15-point difference is thoroughly consistent with the two utterly extreme interpretations, namely nature and nurture. That is, in principle, it could be so. I don't think it is. That the difference is due to inborn capacities that vary between the races, and the other obvious explanation is that the difference is due to the enormous social disadvantages that the legacy and history of racism continues to impose upon the lives of black people in the United States. Either explanation would equally well account for the difference. So it is a fact whose meaning is totally unspecified by the existence of the fact itself.
Are white people really intellectually superior to black people? Hey family, welcome back to the channel. I hope you're doing well wherever you're watching from. I am your presenter Kachina, and today we are diving into a very powerful and necessary conversation. For a very long time, society has been fed a lie, a dangerous myth that white people are intellectually superior to black people. That lie has been used to justify slavery, segregation, and the ongoing systems of oppression. But here's the truth. It's fake science built on racism, not fact. And I'll say it once again, it's only built on racism and not fact. And I believe that it's time to dismantle this once and for all. Today we hear from someone who exposed that lie using real science. The late Stephen Jay Gould. That's the person I'm talking about. He was a respected evolutionary biologist, historian of science, and a professor at Harvard University. In his work, he directly challenged the racist theories that tried to link intelligence to race. He made it clear that there's no scientific basis for racial superiority. He even proved that whiteness does not equal intelligence. Yeah, you heard me right. Ladies and gentlemen, in this speech, or rather interview you are about to hear, it breaks it all down. Gould does not just defend black people, he defends truth, dignity, and human equality. And this message is more relevant now than ever. So sit back, listen closely, and remember, for black people to truly prosper, we have to unlearn the lies that were designed to keep us down and call them out every time we see them. It's not about pointing fingers, it's not about blaming white people, it's just about putting the truth out there so that we can empower ourselves, so that we can unlearn the lies that were planted into our minds. Because once black people realize that whites are not intellectually better, or we are equally the same, then I'm sure that it may motivate or inspire some black people to probably even dare to dream big. Yeah, and therefore, without wasting any time, let's get to watch the video. And I really hope that you'll stay until the end of the video, because after the video, we will get to come back here and have a brief discussion where I'll give my commentary and really break down whatever the professor has been talking about. We'll break it bit by bit and get a very clear understanding on this topic. So right away, let's get into it.
Why do you think American society is so obsessed with IQ?
I don't know that we're obsessed by it, but I think it arises largely in the context of the lamentable history of our racism. I don't know that it's as much an issue in more homogeneous societies, but we have a situation based on the legacy of racism and continued oppression of people of African descent in this country that has led, for social reasons, to poor average performance of blacks on these tests. That doesn't tell you why it happens, but in a basically racist climate in a country with a strong racist history, I suppose it's not surprising that particularly conservative social thinkers would try to relate poor performance of blacks to intrinsic biological limits.
So are you trying to say that measuring IQ is used here as an instrument for racism?
It has been in the past. I don't think it's much used that way. Now, in fact, I'm not sure that IQ in the old-fashioned sense is much measured by mental testers at all today, except if you read Ernstein and Murray's bell curve, clearly these data still exist. I just didn't think that many people granted that number much meaning anymore. As I like to put it, the quick critique of the bell curve is that it's based upon 4 assumptions, all of which have to be true. If any one of them is false, the whole argument collapses. First, there has to be a meaningful single number that can be given to intelligence, and I think that's false. Secondly, you have to be able to rank people in a single linear order upon it, and that order has to then correlate with social attributes, whether you go to prison or not, whether you have children out of wedlock, etc., your income. Thirdly, that number has to be highly heritable. And fourthly, it has to be unchangeable, or effectively unchangeable. A lot of people confuse the third and the fourth. They assume that if something's heritable, it means it's unchangeable, but that's false. Suppose the first 3 were true, and they're not. I mean, suppose there was a legitimate number, and you could rank people, and it was highly hereditary. It still could be very mutable. For example, the obvious example is I may have an inherited defective vision, which is 100% inherited, and I go to the drugstore and I buy a pair of eyeglasses and my vision is fine. I mean, it could be, all those things could be true about intelligence, but the equivalent of buying the pair of eyeglasses, namely programs of remedial education, might boost IQ, and then the whole argument would collapse.
Then how do you feel about testing children to see what would be the best school for them to go to?
Depends on what you want to use it for. Again, if you look at Binet's original intentions in setting up the IQ test in 1905, 1906, when he did the first ones, you see, Binet was a French psychologist, and he was commissioned by the Commissioner of Education in France to devise a test to find students who needed help. And that's why he did the test. And his motives were entirely benevolent. In fact, he specifically argued against giving a hereditary interpretation because he understood that if you did that, you would misinterpret the number as a limit rather than an aid. He wanted to use the number as an aid to identify children who needed help so that they could be given help. And everything could be done for them. Whereas if you give a hereditary interpretation, then you identify a low score with people who can't be helped. The exact opposite occurs. You invert the original purpose. So as long as Binet's original purposes are honored, the tests can be used benevolently, and sometimes they are. For example, tests are used usefully to help identify people who have specific difficulties like dyslexia or autism or other forms of disability in learning, and there's nothing wrong with that. The human mind just doesn't work very well with certain questions. We're very bad at probability. We're always making these dichotomous divisions of things into two. One of the things we're very bad at is when we're faced with something that's very complex, as intelligence is, because it involves lots of different independent abilities, the relationship between hereditary and environment, and all these complex questions. We have this terrible tendency to try and make things simple, try and get a single number. There's a whole history in subject after subject of trying to encompass complex and independent attributes with a single number. My colleague Medawar, for example, once wrote a very interesting article showing how in soil science, in this totally different field, people for decades got hung up on trying to get a single number to measure the quality of soil. Now, how can you do that? There's no such thing as the quality of soil. This one is 51. This one is 76.2. There isn't. There are just different things that soils can do. The same. Now, the human mind is even more complex. There is no number that can capture the quality of mind, and it's almost humorous to think that there is. But unfortunately, the assumption that we can do such a thing, tied to the use of such theories by conservative social ideologies, has had profoundly negative consequences for the lives of millions of people. There are millions of people, particularly in this country, who've been told they can't do this, who've been denied admission to this or that program on the basis of a number, which was falsely interpreted as representing an intrinsic limit upon them based on their biology, but was in fact only a measure of social influences upon their lives. So unfortunately, it's not funny when it's had such tragic consequences. And that's, of course, why we are upset over the fact that the issue seems to keep coming up, because it has consequences. It hurts people.
Alright, so we've all heard Stephen Jay Gould break it down. Let's be real clear about something. Does race really determine someone's intelligence? No, race does not determine intelligence. That idea that white people are somehow intellectually better than black people, it's not just wrong, it's dangerous. It's a myth rooted in racism, and science has completely debunked it. Let's walk through why. First of all, genetics doesn't back it up. If you look at science and genetics, then there is one thing that you'll notice, and that is that there is actually more genetic variation within racial groups than between them. That means two people of the same race can be more different from each other genetically than they are from someone of a different race. And what does this mean? I think it's self-explanatory, and here's the key thing. Race is not a biological category. It's a social construct. Race is just human-made. It's not something scientific or something that can be backed up by science. It's not biological. It's something that humans came up with. It's just the skin, and that's all. And even genetics does not back that up. A system whereby humans made up on ourselves. It doesn't determine how smart someone is, and it has been debunked. If at all you have listened to the video, and if at all you do your research, then you'll realize that this is the real information. Next, intelligence is not fixed. I think it's definitely not simple, and a person's intelligence is shaped by all kinds of things: their environment, access to quality education, nutrition, stress levels, even how they are treated by the society. And IQ tests, they've been shown to be or to have cultural biases. Often they measure how familiar someone is with certain knowledge, not their raw brain power. And in this case, the IQ tests taken during those days of slavery, they did not even focus on raw brain power. In fact, what they were really doing was testing a person's knowledge on a certain field. And remember, back then, the knowledge blacks had was really limited because the levels of inequality back then, talking about their stress levels were high, how they were treated by the society or how they were viewed, their nutrition was high. It was really hard to get a black educated person. And remember, they were measuring their IQ tests back then and comparing them unfavorably to their white counterparts. And you want us to believe, or they wanted us to believe, that using those IQ tests that they are better than us. And I can tell you for a fact that that has really, or that whole theory or that whole story has really impacted black minds, especially those who have been in Africa. I'm from Africa, and I can tell you for a fact that it has really shaped how most Africans think. Africans have really idolized whites, and they really see whites as some sort of gods. They see that after God, it's whites. And it's sad to see them believe that whites are better than them. Yet it's just a theory, a myth that was planted in our brains, and it's not true. So it's not about pointing fingers or about spreading hate. It's about telling the truth and educating that one person, to get to know that we are more than what we think, and we can achieve things. Race is not a limitation, despite the fact that the ground was not leveled. Given a situation where the ground is leveled, then we may compete against them. Anyway, third, we have to talk about history. Racial gaps we still see today, and I've talked about it, I've hinted. In education, income, talk about health, they didn't come out of nowhere. They're just results of hundreds of years of injustice, colonialism, slavery, segregation, and systems that have still disadvantaged black communities even up to present day. But here's the important part. When people do get equal opportunities, they perform just as well. When blacks get equal opportunities and when the ground is leveled, when we bring the starting point at the same point, or when blacks and whites are put in the same working environments, then blacks will definitely compete and work equally as good as white people. You know, it's not about race. It's not about race. So the fact that probably we may be disadvantaged may be playing a very huge role as to why most blacks may be seeing themselves as probably intellectually inferior to white people. And as I am saying in this video, it's just but a myth. And finally, brilliance isn't limited by color. And I think that's the whole message of this video. Brilliance isn't limited by color. Black individuals have made extraordinary contributions to every field you can think of. Think of science, think of art, literature, politics, philosophy, name them. And I know in the past there have been instances where, let's say, black inventors or inventions made by blacks have not been credited, and the history has tried to be erased or kind of changed so as to favor whites. We've had black inventors. Did you know that the traffic lights were invented by a black person? Did you know that? Yeah, so blacks are equally smart, and brilliance is not just limited by color. Blacks, given the same conditions, they can compete, and they can be viewed as equally intelligent because they are intelligent. I'm not saying that whites are less intelligent or blacks are more intelligent. All I'm saying is that color does not determine one's intelligence. And if you are a black person out there and you are kind of limited in the way that you thinking that whites are better than you, then I'd like to call you out. It's time to wake up. You can do better. You can dare to dream this very day. And if you're a white person and you're watching this video, I bet you agree with the facts that I am giving. And if at all you do not agree, then please feel free to share your views in the comment section. Black or white, I believe it's important to have such kind of conversations because they open up our minds and the way that we think. And otherwise, let's keep calling it out. Let's keep learning, and let's keep listening to the people like Gold. You know, he's a professor and his works really impress me. I've read some of his books and I can recommend them to you. Yeah, you can look them up. Otherwise, no race is smarter than the other one. And if anyone dares to tell you otherwise as a black person, that you are less smart or you're less intelligent, then what those people are really trying to repeat is old. It's discredited pseudoscience. It's not a fact. It's prejudice dressed up to sound smart. Black folks, I am glad that you're now aware of this fact. And until then, I believe that the purpose of this video has been achieved. I have been your presenter, Kachina, and thank you so much for tuning in. If at all the video resonates with you, then please give it a thumbs up and also consider subscribing to this YouTube channel. And that way you'll get to see videos as I upload them. I upload videos on a daily basis, and by subscribing, you would have done yourself some good as a black person. Support this channel, please. Otherwise, see you in the next video. Peace, love, and black power.